here. Spoonie,
Present.
Spoonie, Timothy Spoonie.
Present, sir.
Margaret and Mary. Do we have a Margaret and Mary?
Yes.
Cool.
And the margaritas.
All right. Class here. We're ready. Let's go.
Yes, let's go.
Okay.
This is the time to line up behind your team, to support your team, have faith in that team.
It's peaks and valleys. It can't always be good. And as I always tell people, you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. But when we do know about
house call, Trevon Diggs, pick six. It's coming. They see it. Knocked away. Oh, Gregory. Hurts in trouble. 3 Cowboys wrap him up, make it 4. Micah Parsons is unblockable.
Ladies and gentlemen, wait, can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me now? Am I good? Did we fix it? Am I good?
You're good. Good to go.
We got a little bit of a late start. Apparently, producer Jay updated my Chrome and all that good stuff, and it wouldn't let me talk. Like they couldn't hear me, so I had to do some things on the back end. But with that being said, y'all know the drill, man. You're now tuned into the Pick Six Live Sports each and every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central. Here to deliver the newest and most up-to-date news. And boy, we got some interesting stuff to talk about that broke while I was doing the pre-show space. Dear Lord Jesus. With that being said, hope everybody's coming in having a fantastic week. Hump day. Hope everything's good. Professor O, how's your Wednesday going, sir?
It's going well. Kind of a stressful day at work, but not a bad stressful. More of like an exciting stressful. Trying to close a deal. It's a really big one. So this is pretty much my entire day was going back and forth with the client and the candidate to try to wrap this thing up. And it's still not done. So rolling it into tomorrow. But it wasn't a bad day. It wasn't a bad day.
More wood to chop tomorrow, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. We're still doing due diligence right now. That's kind of where we're at.
There
so
it is.
We're working through it. Making sure the pie lines up for everybody. So
big thanks. Our guy Spoonie, he jumped on a plane and is out of the country on a little vacation, but it was a perfect time for him to go on vacation because Mary's like, I'm back, guys. And here she is.
Yeah. I was on my deathbed last week, but I'm alive. I made it through. So, glad to be back.
Yeah, Mary had.
We just got our first super chat. Our first ever super chat.
Shout out to our guy, J Tuck. Not just friend of the show, family of the show. Y'all have seen us back and forth on both channels and everything else. CFO's in the house. Our very first super chat. Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you. And hey, man, y'all see, man. Let's go and light up the flames, man. Light them up in the chat as well, too, guys. Light that thing up. Mary went from deathbed to Wi-Fi in and out. I mean, it's been a struggle for you, Mary.
It's been a struggle, but next week I'll finally have my own place.
Let's go.
I'll be back in the zone next week.
Back in the zone. I like it. And what a perfect time to get in the zone here is we're right on the cusp of, a little actual football that counts. Man, I'll tell you what. As we're, we kind of had a lineup, some things we want to get to, but I think it's very important to start off maybe a couple of the injuries that just happened here towards the end of today's practice. Did we ever get any clarity what happened to Izzy?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Fair. So basically, he went to the training room, came back out, helmet on the side, and didn't practice anymore. So we'll wait for some clarity on that. But the big one, right? Our guy Tyron Smith. It's not a matter of if, we always say it's kind of a matter of when. Kind of took a little stumble, huh?
He did, yeah. So he was running downfield to try to block Leighton Vander Esch. Fell down. It was a non-contact injury, which are typically the scariest ones. And he immediately grabs his left knee. Micah Parsons, Connor McGovern run over to him. He gets up and walks off the field, but with a noticeable limp, which is scary, especially with Tyron in his injury situation. The first immediate reports were people speculating that it could be ankle-related because he's had ankle injuries last year and this year. But he grabbed his knee, and that part was pretty clear. So he left the field. Josh Ball took over at left tackle. Real exciting there. Good news, potentially, we'll kind of put a caveat there, is he did walk out of the facility without a limp. He didn't have any brace or any protective stuff over his leg, per Michael Gelkin and Patrick Walkers. So shout out to them with the updates. But he's going to get an MRI tomorrow, according to Todd Archer, and that's pretty much the standard procedure. The good news, and big fingers crossed here, is typically when it's an ACL injury, they're able to diagnose that or at least have a pretty good indication before going to an MRI because that's a mobility injury. So they'll lay you on a table, they will move your leg all different directions, see if there's mobility, if you have strength to push back. You can walk on an ACL injury, so that's not completely written out yet. But the fact that they sent him home without any brace is an encouraging sign that they don't fear that that's the case right now. So cautious optimism is probably the best way to position it right now. But if I'm the Cowboys, I am absolutely hitting up the phones, calling veteran swing tackles that are available in free agency. I'm calling the Patriots, checking on what they want for Isaiah Wynn, because this is just another wake-up call on what we've been dealing with at tackle. Tyron Smith can't stay healthy. Terrence Steele can't play left tackle. Josh Ball, we don't know if can play either side right now. You need a swing tackle. Go get one. Make that your top priority tomorrow morning. But injury update, Tyron walked out on his own accord without any noticeable limp, so maybe okay. Fingers crossed.
I'll tell you what, for those that haven't seen the clip, I went ahead and logged in real quick. I can throw it up here for our guy. Hold on just a second here. Let me go ahead and share a screen.
Beirut Wedding says, I don't care, I'm going to panic anyways. That's actually a totally valid response right now, so feel free to do that. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, that's big facts. That's big facts. So there's the injury right there. If y'all haven't seen it yet, he'll come off here. He's going to make some contact with LVE and then boom, directly down and grabs the knee. Now kind of full screen that to maybe get you a little bit bigger, get our faces out of there. So that's, never good. Not what you want to see. Obviously, kind of almost the non-contact type of injury. But the early reports, Mary, seem to be okay. We'll have to wait until we get the MRI. The only thing that it sticks in my head is this. Remember when Roma had the hit in Seattle and it's like, hey, he wanted to go back in. It's fine. They get back to Dallas. Oh, he has a broken back. So the next 24 hours for sure is going to be a little telling here. Obviously, Connor McGovern also came back with he gave me a reassuring grunt that he always gives me in the locker room. So hopefully we'll see what happens overnight. We'll see what the MRI brings to there. But man, it is scary times. And like what you said, I said the same thing in the space earlier. Wake up call. Oh, I'm right there with you. Like, hey, it's here in your face now. Make that call. Look, you don't have, if they go trade for Wynn, the $10 million, whatever the case may be, you don't have Steele signed next year either. You got to sign a guy either way, right? And
right.
unlike Ball, who's more prototypical, better at right tackle than left tackle, same thing with Steele. We know Wynn plays left tackle, right? So
yep.
that's definitely something they need to look into with that kind of clarity. Mary, did you saw the play?
Yeah.
You clutched pearls.
I mean, you always worry, especially when it's a guy like Tyron, because if it's not one thing, it's another with him. Like O mentioned, it's a non-contact injury, and he immediately fell and grabbed his knee. The only thing that really does give me hope is, he walked out without a brace or anything, because typically, even if that's what you fear, if you fear it's an ACL, you still don't let him walk out without anything on his knee. You are more cautious than just letting him walk out with nothing. So that's the only thing that gives me hope. But even if he is fine for now, I mean, this just highlights how quickly that situation can turn at any moment. So they definitely need to do something. I mean, and that's what we've been saying all off season for them to do. So hopefully they finally realize it and actually do what we've been wanting them to do.
Yeah. Eddie, Tyron Smith, and for those who may be getting here a little bit late, we'll let's see if I can throw it up there one more time. There you go. Tyron Smith went down here on this play at camp, or practice, I should say, going out to reach block here on the second level on LVE, and then kind of goes down and grabs the knee right away is what's going on there, Eddie. And for anyone that tuned in here late who hasn't had a chance to see the clip. Now, that's not the only semi-injury concern that we have here on the offensive line. The Rook, a little bit of an ankle issue.
Yeah, so Tyler Smith has a left ankle injury. I believe it's his left ankle, but he has an ankle injury that he's dealing with. Somebody actually pulled up a moment in the game against the Chargers where they think he may have aggravated it, and it does look like that might be the case. They don't seem overly concerned with it, but they also aren't overly concerned with Tyron Smith right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to see. But we did hear from Mike McCarthy in the press conference, which we'll talk about later, on his status or projected status for the season. But yeah, there's just another guy out right now, because this would be a good time when you don't have a solidified vet swing tackle available to say, hey, we're playing Connor McGovern at center this week. He's starting. Why don't we give Tyler Smith some game action snaps at tackle? See how it looks. We tried it in minicamp. We've done it periodically, just a little bit dabbling back and forth, and training camp so far. So maybe let's see what he looks like in live game action for even a small handful of snaps. But I don't know if he's going to be good to play or not. We'll have to kind of wait and see. But right now it looks like it's just an ankle injury. They don't seem overly concerned.
Yeah. Now, if I'm not mistaken, actually, I do believe it was Skywalker who threw it up there. Yeah, I think I got it right here. And let me mute that real quick.
Getting vertical, put his foot in the ground, takes contact.
And I'll bring that up as well.
Uses his hand as.
Let me bring that up for you real quick as well over here. And this is kind of where you see where a ball kind of rolled up on, boom, where he rolled up on Tyler. Let me throw it out there real quick. So this is the play here against the Chargers. And as it rolls back here to the very front, right here, boom, and you see him get right there on the left ankle there of Tyler Smith on the way back down. So possibly, shout out to Skywalker still threw this up earlier today, and that's possibly where he aggravated the left ankle injury right there with that roll up. Unfortunately, I got Maxwell super chat in the building.
Thank you.
Congrats on 1K. Appreciate you guys creating a platform for all of us Cowboys stations to connect and talk some football. 2K coming soon. Zeke first now. Shout out to my guy Zeke. He's always in the spaces, always in here as well. Appreciate you, man. And I'm glad you had a great workout at the gym and came back into the space afterwards. Workouts do matter. Man, the other thing, I know we're still kind of covering some of these injuries, but you messaged us during the space. We didn't have a chance to actually talk. It was very interesting at this standpoint that they're going to start they're going to start Connor McGovern at center Friday. Is it something? Is it interesting? Is it back to Mark McCarthy and this, hey, we like his flexibility, all these different things, right?
Yeah, it's something. I mean, think about this. Like, we just saw Matt Farniak play the entire pronunciation guide came out. We got to make sure we're saying the players' names right. I think his name has been one of the most butchered names because I've heard Farniak. Apparently it's Farniak. So we just saw him play center and look pretty good at doing that against the Chargers. He played all 100% of the snaps of that game, playing center and guard, but he looked pretty good. So the thought was, well, Tyler Biadasz is your starter, and he's your backup center guard. He's kind of that swing guy. It's really interesting that this late into preseason in training camp, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, we had Connor McGovern do some snaps last year. Let's try that again. Like, you think if he's a viable center option, they would have done this 4 or 5 weeks ago, early in training camp, and let him get some reps periodically. But they just started doing it this week. So it's interesting. I don't know that it's a huge deal right now, but it's definitely a deal. It's interesting.
Right. And, you know, the other thing from the press conference, well, if we lined it up today, McGovern would be the starting left guard. little coy there from Mike McCarthy, Mary, on him using today, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we did it right now, if we had to play right now, which doesn't mean he's gonna be starting week 1 at left guard, obviously. So, I thought it was interesting. He made it clear that the distinction. But I agree with Matto that it's weird that they would put him at center this week after all this time. I think they are just by any means necessary trying to make sure he's on that line starting at somehow, some way, even if it's not left guard. It's like, we got this veteran guy. We need to see what he can really do. Let's find somewhere for him to be. Hopefully it works out.
I mean, I can fix the offensive line real quick. It ain't gonna happen, but I mean, just kick Zach Martin out there to left tackle. Okay, but Connor McGovern, who plays right guard well, and then your rookie at left guard, and boom, we're done, right?
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. And here's the thing, though, is just in general, and we had the show a few weeks ago, and we kind of talked about maybe a fireable offense here with, I was like, man, I would move on from Philbin. This is after the Broncos joint practice. I'm like, bro, like, what are we doing? And it's just been that, like, look, he was being coy with the lineup today, and he would start at left guard and all that. But it's just another shrimp on the Barbie, if you will, of how this has been puzzling, of how they've handled the offensive line during training camp and through preseason, and this weird, influx over here at left guard at times. And now all of a sudden we were told open competition at center. To me, it hasn't really felt that way. Then obviously here in the last game of the preseason, we know what, Connor McGovern, get over there and play some center and let's see what's going on. So yeah, I don't know. That's again, puzzling is the term that I come with. Professor, on the injury front, what else do we need to cover on the injury front?
Well, Jordan Lewis is still out, so probably worth noting today, because we've seen Deron Blaine get the first team reps at nickel cornerback. Today we saw a little mix up there. So we saw Kelvin Joseph get the reps with the first team defense on the outside and then moved Anthony Brown inside. So that's probably the only major thing we haven't covered so far injury-wise that's worth noting. We kind of, we already touched on Tyron Smith. We touched on Izzy. Oh, good news. We got Jaron Kearse back. Full go today. And he looked good. He got really good reviews. So it's nice to have him back in action. And I think Noah Brown was also back in action today, if I read that correctly. So
there we go. Getting some guys back.
So we lost the safety in Izzy, but we got Kearse back. So
yeah. So again, we got some guys back. We lost some guys, and again, obviously the big hold your breath moment is, let's see what the MRI shows us tomorrow. Because I mean, even if it's not like as serious as we think, like the ACL is out for the year, I mean, it could be like it's sprained, or something, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we got to miss 3 games. And then what do you got to look at with Ball at left tackle? So that's the biggest thing that we'll be taking a look at tomorrow and moving forward on that front. But we did kind of started talking something about the Mike McCarthy press conference today. It was, and you said, it was pretty sad.
It was. So a lot of the McCarthy press conferences, especially over the last 3 weeks, whether they're pre-practice, pre-joint practice, post-joint practice, pre-game, etc., have been encouraging because we're getting nuggets on players like, this is how Rico Dowdle looks. We like him. This is what Dennis Houston's doing. Here's how so-and-so's recovering. It's been good stuff. And today, pretty much every topic that was asked, and it wasn't like they were bad questions. They were good, viable questions. Just didn't really get the answer that I wanted to hear. And maybe that's my fault for being a fan, being optimistic and excited for the season. But every answer he gave today, I'm like, oh, come on. And then the next answer, I'm like, it's just getting worse. This is just not a good day. And then we heard the injury, and I'm like, man, this is just it's rough. But yes, I did want to give a couple quick shout outs. We have our guy Rome in the building, Cowboys Fan Talk. Definitely check out his channel. We got our guy DMV, John Garner in the chat. Shout out to him. And we got King Element. So King Element's new to the channel. He is one of the Vox Lombardi Volume and Skywalker A to Z guys. So appreciate you coming over here and checking us out.
Nice. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was weird. They're kind of talking about who's going to start, right? And he's like, well, these young guys, they got to get reps. They got to get live game reps. It was kind of big, pushing that narrative, what's going on, which is fair, which is understandable. But to me, it's funny on the back end. You're talking about these reps. Well, you're not getting all the reps with the first team during, camp and practice here with Tyler Smith. So what are we really talking about at times? Just that weird double talk that happens. then he kind of talked about the quarterbacks. And I saw Dave Hellman's like maybe 3 quarterbacks on this final 53-man roster, Mary.
That's a waste of a spot. It absolutely is a waste of a spot. Like, and to me, that feels like they feel like Will Greer's probably winning, but they don't want to. They're holding on to that one game Cooper Rush won while Dak was out, and they just don't want him off this roster. So it's just like, yeah, we're gonna keep 3 because they just, even though Will Greer looks like he's winning right now, they don't. No matter what, they don't want to give it a Cooper Rush either. So I think that's ridiculous though, because they don't need that spot.
Yeah, word is lots of reps for Greer on this last game to see what he has and what's coming through. So yeah, man, boy, if they keep 3, because we've been kind of talking about when you get to the running back and the wide receiver room inside, just on the offensive side, right? And how you can carry and what this thing can look like. Boy, 3 quarterbacks is going to cost somebody a spot. And man,
can Cooper Rush block? Like, can he play online?
Can he play special teams?
Yeah, can he do anything else besides QB? I mean, then maybe we can keep giving him a spot. Like,
I'm still going to pound the table. I'm with you. I'm still pounding the table for Greer. I appreciate you, Cooper Rush, but I'm pounding the table. Team building
or bad team, whatever.
Yeah.
To have him on there as a 3rd QB when you're highly unlikely to ever need him.
Yeah.
See, this is that week, though. This is the smoke and mirror week, if any, that you have all season long. This is the week because this is when teams know they have a cut down coming up that's important. You have players that you're like, hey, let's give Kelvin Joseph first-team reps. Let's get Kelvin Joseph in that conversation that he may be a starter, which we know he's not going to be. He's not going to be one of the top 3 cornerbacks on the team. But you get the opportunity now because maybe you want to shop him, see if he has a market. This is when teams are saying guys like Isaiah Wynn. There's just a report right now that Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins is available for trade, and they've brought him up to teams in trade conversation. So you're going to see a lot of teams positioning players in a way that may not necessarily be what their plans actually are, like a Connor McGovern, for instance, being a guy that could potentially play guard and center. That might be why you showcase him at center this week. So we're going to see a lot of like weird things. Same thing with quarterback. Maybe they know there could be a market. I don't know if it'll be a big one, but there might be a market for a guy like Cooper Rush or a Will Greer. So you want to position it saying, no, Cooper Rush is our guy. His job's locked up, and showcase Will Greer with a longer snap count, knowing he's probably not going to make our team, and we may want to swing a trade for him and see if we can recoup a 6th or 7th round pick for it. So there's going to be a lot of things right now that you see that may not necessarily reflect how the team really feels because they're showcasing players to try to get a market for them.
Yeah, it's Big 10-4, we want to see some things leak out here, whatever we might hear about, like a guy like Tristan Hill maybe about to get traded or something. So, I mean, things are definitely going to happen. I think the problem here is it's just a lot of the same that we've been seeing during training camp and everything else, particularly with the offensive line, right? Maybe not everything else, but particularly with the offensive line and how they've talked and came out and handled the reps and all these different things. So anything else from the press conference for either one of y'all from McCarthy that maybe stuck out to you? So we covered the offensive line, right? We covered the wide receiver, or the quarterbacks, the young guys, McGovern starting.
Probably Gallup.
There you go, Gallup as well, right? So they're definitely on the, because that was the big question with the cut down on the 5. Would they make the move and put Gallup on the PUP reserve list and go ahead and free up that spot? They did not, and they don't seem to have plans that they're going to do that. So very interesting how quickly he's going to come back. It's been hotly debated around Cowboys Nation. We've had our moments here talking about it as well. Yeah, it's been anywhere from I've heard 2 games from people. I've heard half the season from people. I've always settled in the lane of I think he misses 3 games. It's kind of where I'm at. I know you're kind of in the 6th realm, right?
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth. I mean, it was encouraging. We got to see him run routes against the Chargers, but he looked gimpy. It didn't look smooth. He laughed when reporters asked him if he was going to be ready for week 1. So if he's laughing that, no, there's no chance I'm ready for week 1, do we really think he's going to be 100% for week 3 or week 4? Like, to me, it just makes sense to put him on the PUP list, conserve that roster spot so that you have it for somebody else. Then you can activate him when he's really fully ready to go, because that's the type of injury, if you rush him back from it, he can re-aggravate it, and then you're missing him even longer. Kind of the timetable of what I was originally thinking is following the 9-month rehab from his surgery in late January, early February, is that October 30th game, somewhere in that week range, which is week 8 or 9. but it looks like they fully expect him to be back sooner. What was interesting, though, is McCarthy said, we're not putting him on the PUP list right now. We're going to keep evaluating things. We don't think we need to do it right now. And then Jerry Jones said basically the complete opposite, saying, no, we're not putting him on the PUP list. We think he's going to be available before week 4, so we don't want to, put him on PUP list and hold him back when he would be healthy. So it's kind of a mixed bag there and miscommunication, which is pretty common with our team. So that's not great when your GM/owner is basically refuting what your head coach just said in a press conference shortly afterwards. But here we are.
Todd Archer said sources indicate that Tyron Smith's ACL is intact after the initial review. More reviews coming in the morning. Perhaps the Cowboys have had some good luck. And, there's some reports saying now that possibly a hyperextension. So
that can make him ready for week 1, but they should still do something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're just that little nick away, and then it's ball at left tackle. And, y'all thought Chaz Green was bad at left tackle.
Oof, Lord.
Yeah, that part.
What's frustrating is we're talking about Isaiah Wynn. We're talking about Eric Fisher. And the Cowboys are like, Ty and Secchi, what's up, bro? You already know the offense. You could be here in just a snap of a finger. We'll have you back in camp. That's what they're thinking. Like, that's the move they would make instead.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the Cowboys' way. We understand that. But look, just bring a guy in here, right? It's just kind of where I think we all reside at when it comes to, the idea of Josh Ball. Look, I think if you got to play Josh Ball at right tackle, you can survive a game or two. I think he's much better at right tackle than left tackle. He can kind of maul and do some things. He'll help you in the run game some. He won't get beat nearly as much in pass pro, but boy, at left tackle, it is scary times with him at left tackle. Okay, well, kind of pivoting over here to maybe a little bit of a 53-man roster talk real quick. I threw a poll up this week for the Cowboys Nation to answer to and said, hey, how many undrafted free agents make the final 53-man roster? I gave 0, 1, 2, 3 or more. Now, afterwards, I will say some people said, well, Turpin would count. I was like, yeah, but I was talking about rookies. So I'm maybe a little tongue-in-cheek when it comes to what the responses were. But Cowboys actually came through and at 50.3% with 2. And then in second place was 3 or more, 37.8%. And then you can kind of see the rest of the list there. So let me pivot and ask you guys, in y'all's opinion, how many undrafted free agents makes the final 53-man roster, Mary?
I mean, I do think it's possible for at least 2. I think that sounds like a good number.
You like 2? All right. Oh, what do you like here?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with 2. I could see 3 potentially if they decide to go deeper at linebacker, maybe if like a Story Jackson or somebody like that makes a team. Mm-hmm. But as of right now, it doesn't look like that's realistic. But Marquise Bell seems like a near lock, and it looks like Peyton Hendershot has a viable fighter's chance. That could be 3, though, if Malik Davis makes the team. But then you're probably not going 4 deep at running back and 4 deep at tight end. But he could potentially be the 3rd running back if they decide to go for the youth movement over Rico Dowdle. But I don't think that's the case. So I'm going to stick with 2 and go with Hendershot and Bell.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I think Bell's a lock for sure. I think Bell's a lock. I think it's a done deal. Hendershot, once they moved on from Sprinkle.
Yeah, Sprinkle was injured, right?
Yeah. So they moved on from him, injury settlement. So to me, I thought at that point Hendershot makes, because I think the Cowboys are going to carry 4 tight ends. Historically, this is kind of what they've done. Yeah. I think they're going to carry 4. There's the 4 on the roster. I think Hendershot's here. Now, to the much chagrin maybe of Cowboys Nation, Houston and Davis, I just don't know. The biggest thing is I think if Gallup was going to the PUP list, then I think Houston had a much better chance to make the final 53-man roster, right? And I don't think he's going to supplant Simi Fehoko, as we're working on our pronunciation right here. Simi Fehoko, right? Yes. Am I good there?
It's Simi. It's Simi.
I said Simi. I think you said it wrong.
No, okay. It's our girl Camber.
Okay.
Camber
calls
him Simi.
Yeah.
She's messing us up. It's Simi. Simi Fehoko.
Yeah, so I don't think that he's going to be able to jump him. Davis is interesting because I wonder in house, does he give them more special teams wise than Rico Dowdle? Is the interesting point. But yeah, I think they're only going to carry 3 at the running back position. I would love for it to be Davis. I like what Davis has brought to the table, but the familiarity with Dowdle and how long they've been working with him kind of seems to me that might keep him over him. So I'm gonna go with 2. I think Hendershot. I think it's Bell. I think Bell from day one was kind of a lock, and unless he just fumbled the bag and he got here and we saw what he's done, and we've heard them talk about him, so I think he's in the building. Now, if you want to slide and take the rookie off of it, it would be 3 because Turpin, undrafted wise, would be a guy that would make the team as well. But from the rookie standpoint,
3 might be doable though, because if you think about it, Sean McEwen now this week, the most important week for these guys that are fighting for roster spots, just happens to be hurt. He just happens to be hurt right now. Not saying he's going to be an IR stash because it may not be a significant injury at all.
right?
But if they like what Ferguson's done and they're happy with Hendershot being the stretch the field different from the prototype that you have at tight end currently, because Schultz, Ferguson, and McEwen all kind of fit the same mold, then you have Hendershot who's more of the athletic field stretcher type of guy. They may say, hey, we'll go with 3 tight ends and we'll put McEwen on IR. We'll IR stash him. We'll let him make the roster, then put him on IR. Like, there's a lot of things they could do that route. But you think Houston probably has a fighter's chance to make the roster, and I think a lot of people think he will make the roster. So if you're throwing him in the equation with Bell and Hendershot, you could go 3 deep, and you could go 4 deep depending on what they do with Davis. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Man, my God said they're all made. Look, Houston, Hendershot, Turpin, Davis,
wow.
Bell. He said all of them.
Oh no, that kind of scares me if all of them can make the team. I think that's not a good thing.
Yeah, and see that's kind of where I'm at with you, King Element, because I think Davis does give you more into the special teams role, depending on how they want to break this down and how they want to stash it or how they want to keep these guys. That's going to be interesting, that third spot to me, and whether they go Rico or Davis and what he gives. So I think my guy my guy Eddie O actually made a good point here too. So Davis over Dowdle, because Dowdle is in the last year of his deal and Davis has 3 years. I don't know if he signed a 4-year deal as an undrafted guy or not. I did look that up. I don't know his contract off the top, but interesting point with Dowdle being his last year.
I think that's 3.
Dowdle 3. Okay, so maybe they look at that and say, hey, younger guy, and kind of what we talked about in the back channel the other day when we were going back and forth. He's younger. He's not been injured. How Rico's coming off of injury. So there's some things to be had there. I kind of think at this point Davis might have more of a chance than Houston. Again, just because of the Michael Gallup situation not going on PUP and how they got to carry guys. I think Davis might have a bigger chance of making this final 53-man roster than Houston right now.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Like, if Gallup was starting out on PUP list, I would say Houston's a lock.
Be different, yeah.
But if they really do think he's going to make the 53 and be ready, whether he's ready week 1 or not, but he's going to have a roster spot week 1 if they don't PUP list him, how are you keeping 7 at wide receiver? I just don't see how that's viable. Like, you're not sitting Turpin. You're not sitting Gallup. Well, Gallup might sit, but he's on the roster. You're not sitting CeeDee Lamb. You have Noah Brown, Simi Fehoko. Like, who's he beating out? It would be between Houston and him. And then you have the whole James Washington equation we haven't even talked about yet. What are you going to do there? Because they haven't made a move yet. Is he going to make the roster at all? Are you going to IR settle him?
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do? Like, that? It's really intriguing what they're going to do with the wide receiver room. But yeah, Dennis Houston, as recently as yesterday, looked like a lock to make the team. But if Gallup's not going on PUP, I don't know how he makes it.
Same. So it'll definitely be very interesting to see how this 53-man roster unfolds. Our guy, Aaron for the 561 says, congrats on 1K and super chats. Hendershot is a surprisingly good blocker. Shocked me. Also, did you hear Mike McCarthy gush about Sam Williams? And yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it last week a little bit in that on the kickoff returns and different things we've seen, like Ferguson and Hendershot have been very applicable in what they're able to do with their blocking. And, sometimes it's just showing the ability of the want to, and they want to, and they've had some pretty good blocks. And even Sean McKeon, for what it's worth, before the injury, had some good things that he did as well, blocking it. So, yeah.
He had a huge block on that kickoff return. He was one of the biggest components of that kickoff return. So,
yeah, big facts. But that, I mean, he sprung the kick return, basically. Hendershot did, because the last block that he got right there that got him wide open. So, yeah, I mean, that's for sure. I think for sure the one thing we can say, we talked a lot about this offseason that the Cowboys roster is not as good as last year. But I think in the pinch here, we talk about just the tight end room. I think the tight end room got much better this offseason.
I mean, we're definitely more confident. This time last year, we definitely weren't sure. We still had some reservations about Schultz. We didn't know what some of the other guys were going to do. So I definitely feel better about the tight end room right now than I did this time last season.
I didn't trust any of them to block last year. And there's a caveat to this, right? It's preseason. Like, I understand that. It's not lost to me. But they look really good blocking, not just on offense, which is the main reason you need them, but on the kickoff return, Turpin's big kickoff return touchdown, the 98-yarder, you had a huge block by Ferguson. You had a huge block by McEwen that sprung it. On his punt return, you had a huge block by Quandre Mosley, who they released this week, and Hendershot. So, like, those things matter. It's easy to look at the return man and be like, Devin Hester, amazing. His speed absolutely is incredible. That's amazing. I'm not taking anything away from the return. But a lot of times when you have a big return, it's coming down to the blocking. And we had key blocks from our tight end room, which is a room we didn't feel comfortable blocking at all last year. So it's encouraging to say the least.
Yeah. And one of the things we talked about a lot last year when you want to be, running the ball, different things you want to get done, especially special teams wise, it takes everybody. We talked about earlier this offseason. If you look at teams that run the ball well, it's not about just their offensive line. It's the tight ends, it's the wide receivers. Everybody's involved in the blocking schemes and doing their job. And, you brought up different clips, and we showed them last year. Some of the wide receivers, maybe they would have blocked a little bit better. This goes for 10, maybe to the house. You just don't know. And those are the things that really do matter, ultimately. They don't show up on the sheet, and that's what I like about them. They're doing the dirty work that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but it makes your team better. So I'm super excited about where we're at with tight end. I do think we have upgraded that room this year. And Sam Williams, I'll be honest, I guess I missed out on Mike McCarthy gushing over Sam, but I'm not surprised.
I mean, he's been very, very good, in my opinion, in this camp.
Very true. I'm excited.
I want to point something out to you guys, too, that D-Shift said. So shout out to D-Shift. Thanks for tuning in. He said, we have a way more flexible offense than last year where you lived and died by those wide receivers. I think that's a good point because last year, early in the season, we were pretty reliant on our 12 personnel because we had Schultz and because we had Jarwin. But when Jarwin went out, everything changed, where it was heavily focused on the wide receivers to eat, or the offense kind of stalled because we had injuries to Pollard with Liz Frank injury, I think is what it was last year, and injuries to Zeke, obviously. So the offense just completely changed once that happened. This year you have legitimately 3 to 4 tight ends you feel confident in. You have potentially 4 running backs you feel confident in. So, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think we're more flexible. I don't know that I would say we're a better offense. I think I would take a step back from that, which is not what you said. But I definitely think we have more capabilities to attack a defense if Kellen Moore brings his A game.
Yeah, no, it's all about how he chooses to use the pieces, really. That's my main concern is what is he going to do, and is he going to do it consistently throughout the season? Because I don't want to get my hopes up.
Fair.
So I'm tempering my expectations here.
Yeah. And back to, and once again, Aaron, man, appreciate the super chat and everything. And also the one thing, just kind of cover on the Sam Williams. Man, I'm super excited just because I've seen Dan Quinn already put him everywhere. 3-tech, standing up outside. They're going to employ him as a weapon, and you're not going to know exactly where he's going to be all the time. So where there was maybe a mindset that he was going to be in the mix of rotation on the opposite side of D-Law, I think we're going to see a lot more of him being used in different ways and being creative. So that gets me excited about the pick as well. But appreciate the super chat, brother. Appreciate you rocking with us. My guy, I got to throw it up one more time. Says, I remember BJ outside, and I used to be on the back patio. People was giving me hell about my frogs, everything.
The crickets.
Yeah, they had the crickets, the frogs. I got the koi pond out there. He's always counting on when I couldn't sleep, man. Appreciate you, brother. That means that if you know that means you've been rocking with me a long time. Appreciate that for sure. Big
I have a vivid memory. One time you were on the patio. There was a storm rolling through. You could like see the lightning strikes. You could hear the thunder roaring in the background, and you were like, "It's Knicks with the quiet storm." You went full on in character. It was great.
Big thanks. In the background, interpreting this offensive plays becoming a real thing. We hope, right? I mean, you had this kind of guy available, and whenever we signed him originally, we kind of talked about, I was like, I'm not looking for Turpin to have 30, 40 plays. That's not what I'm looking for from him offensively. but can you get him 10? Can you get a package of 10 plays out of him and have that kind of speed on the field and do different things? It is intriguing to me. And it's something this team hasn't had. We're talking 4.29 speed, 4.28 speed at times.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things I know we've all sit here on this panel and talked about, man, if we just get some speed injected into this offense. And right, we saw that last year with the defense.
Yeah.
Our defense last year got so much faster. And, injecting some speed to the offense is exciting. Again, back to Mary, what you said, hey, they have all these things. They can do some things, but I don't want to get my hopes up. We've been there with Pollard, right? We've been there with Pollard forever. Like, oh, you can put him in the slot now. That kind of helps your wide receiver get creative. But when the lights come on.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be that guy.
Here
but
it comes.
it's worth mentioning. It's worth mentioning, full transparency. The concern I had with a guy like Turpin was that Kellen would not know really how to utilize him correctly. And on offense, so far, that's what I've seen. So when we've utilized Turpin so far in both the joint practices, there was one play. But aside from the one play in joint practices, in the preseason has been the gadget guy. He's come in, you hit up a jet sweep.
Yeah.
You've thrown a wide receiver screen. We haven't used him on any actual route concepts. Like, we're not using him in mesh concepts to try to use his little frame and quick speed to get quick separation. We haven't done that. We haven't thrown slant passes to him where he's able to use his speed and ability to quickly get underneath and inside of a defensive back. Again, it's preseason, so obviously they're not showcasing everything. But what I thought they were going to utilize him for is exactly what they've done so far in the offense. That's a little bit scary.
Yeah. And back to the point with the mesh concept. Boy, mesh them up over there, have that nice mesh, and then boom, just a quick drag. You ain't look. It's the same thing about throwing. It's just a different way of doing like a wide receiver screen. You're going to get the ball to him quickly, but you're able to do things within the mesh concept that you can once again design him to get open very quickly, get the ball in his hands, and let him do the rest afterwards. And maybe that's just something they're going to not show until they get to the regular season. We'll hope, wish, and pray. But as we talked about before, go all the way back to, I don't care who you want to pick, Dunbar, Tavon Austin, Lucky Whitehead. They've had this. They've talked about the wide back a long time here in Dallas, a long time, even before Kellen Moore was OC, and since he's been OC. And they talk about it. They'll get a guy for that kind of position, and it just never kind of pans out. So we'll wait and see. And hopefully this is the year, he kind of grows into that, and we see different things, just like, I don't know, Pollard and Zeke on the field at the same time. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll judge it as it goes. I
don't need him to run every single route, but like line him up in slot out of bunch formation and run a wheel route.
Yeah.
Let him use his speed and size to maneuver quickly and get open, because you don't have to be 6'4" on a wheel route. You just have to get open, which he could do. Run drag routes, like run mesh concepts. Let him run a whip route, like things like that, where you like basically utilize him the way you would have used Cole Beasley, but a faster Cole Beasley. Like, do that stuff with him. Use him as he's an actual slot guy, not just he's your kick returner who happens to be super fast.
Yep.
We'll see what happens in the regular season, but I do want to temper expectations, because I think people think he's going to be a big part of our offense, and I think we've already seen what he's going to be in our offense. He's going to be a gadget guy.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that. I don't have my hopes up about that at all. My main thing about him was wanting him to completely replace CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard on special teams.
Right.
And
which
so,
that a good way. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my only expectation. Anything else that he works at and they use him accurately on is just gravy. But I'm not expecting that at all.
10-4.
I got the ice cream. I know they're not gonna give me the sprinkles. It is
there. Yeah, that's all you get. Ron asking us Freestyle Friday after the game. I think we're just going to live stream the game. We might run a space or something after that. So we're going to kind of pause, put a pin in the Freestyle Friday this week because the game is on Friday. So, but we'll be right here in the building, live stream the game, reacting to it, talking about it, and maybe we might run a Twitter space afterwards, perhaps. But no Freestyle Friday this week. But the following week, though, we'll be right back in the building, guys, on Freestyle Friday, because the Cowboys will be playing next Friday. Man, so there's that. Yeah, I mean, and back to this shit. Oh my God, a faster Cole Beasley is all you need with the tight end room. That's better than the 2018 room, and literally, that's what he is. Yeah, I mean, that's what O was talking about there. So yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. Speaking of preseason, we do have a game Friday, as we are just talking about, with the Seattle Seahawks. And back to Mike McCarthy, what he talks about, we haven't seen the starters. We've seen some starters, right, sporadically kind of sprinkled throughout these preseason games, but not your major hitters, right? It was like 21 the first game they didn't play, and then it was like 22 or 23 didn't play in game 2. And McCarthy once again said, nope, they're not playing. So let me ask the question. Where are you at? And this is kind of philosophy-based, right? I don't know if there's really a clear-cut answer to this, but we'll see what the philosophy is here on the panel and in the room. Mary, does it matter to you that they haven't, like, you know, these guys haven't played in preseason at all? The major hitters, if you will?
In general, no. Because I really don't think, you know, it's going to make or break Dak's, you know, first few weeks. My only main concern is that, like, there's less chemistry with some of these wide receivers. But while they're still shuffling around the O-line, it's pointless anyway, in my opinion. So I'd rather them just see what they're going to do with Cooper and Will Greer and go from there.
Okay. Professor, I think I know where you're going to go, but for you, is this a big deal? No play time at all for the big hitters, starters-wise?
For me, it's not an issue whatsoever.
Y'all see me just
last
real quick?
Year, I was like, let me just sit in my chair real quick for this one. So Nick's J-Tuck and I had spirited debates, to say the least, last year. And last year was a better argument because we had Dak off of injury, coming off of his ankle injury. Then he had the shoulder injury. So there were more reasons to want to see Dak out there last year. I think we all feel good. Dak's fully healthy. Dak's looked great at camp. We don't need to see him out there with Josh Ball blocking for him.
Yeah.
We don't need to see him out there with Collins blocking for him. Like, you want to keep your starting quarterback healthy. And not to mention, our joint practices were against the AFC West. We played the Chargers. We played the Broncos. And the AFC West is supposed to be one of the best divisions in football. And the good thing about that is we heavily played our star. Yeah, that was me stepping up on my soapbox. We heavily played our starters in those joint practices against two of what are projected to be some of the better defenses and teams in the league this year. And I think that's what you want to do because in a joint practice, you have more control over it. You can protect your players. The defensive ends are not lighting up your quarterback. So instead of your quarterback taking a big hit that a guy in a preseason game is trying to make a name for themselves, trying to fight for a roster spot, who may go all out and try to light up your quarterback, say Seattle when we played and lost Romo, you just don't want to risk it. And if you look at the list, Warren Sharp put a list out of the starting quarterbacks or projected starters that haven't played a single snap in preseason. And it's like 21 or 22 of the quarterbacks haven't played a single down in preseason this year. Because teams are saying in our joint practices,
Josh Allen played and Patrick Mahomes played. But
I know. Those two guys did. But it's one of those things in a joint practice, you can protect your quarterback but still get the looks you want. And then in a preseason game, you give the young guys the opportunity because that's a big moment. It's on television. Mm-hmm. There's people in the crowd. You want to see how they perform there versus in a joint practice where things are a little bit more loose and laid back. Because really in the joint practice, I feel for, are we getting costly penalties? Does our offense move the ball effectively? How does our offensive line hold up? Things like that. So in my mind, I have no issue whatsoever. And I don't ever want the starters to play in preseason unless you have a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, or an unproven quarterback. Aside from those three reasons, I don't really feel like there's any reason you should play a starting quarterback. And if he's not playing, you don't really need to play any of your other core starters because what's the good of having Cooper Rush out there with CeeDee Lamb in preseason? What's the point of having Tyron Smith blocking for Will Greer in preseason? It's just one of those things. I'd rather see the young guys get an opportunity and showcase what they can do because all camp long we've seen what the starters look like against the defense, and we have one of the better defenses in the league. We saw the starters against the Chargers who have a good defense. We saw the starters against the Broncos who have a good defense. So I feel like we've seen enough from them to know where we're at.
Yeah, I think for me it's situational, right? Because like last year in the spirited debates that we had, it was more so for me. I just wanted Dak to get some reps because he missed so much football. This year, I don't care. I don't need to see Dak at all in preseason for where he's at now. And it was funny because my guy King Slayer over there in the pre-show space, he had said, "Do you think these injuries are happening because they're not playing preseason games?" And I said, "Well, let's just kind of take case in point. Tyron Smith actually hurt his ankle before we even had a preseason game." I said, then on the flip side, Tyler Smith got hurt his ankle playing a preseason game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, there's not really a rhyme or reason to that. And look, the number one thing we talk about every year in training camp and preseason, get through them unscathed, no injuries, right? That's the biggest thing to do. But I think in this point, when it comes to the Cowboys, here's my only caveat to what should have happened. I needed to see the starting offensive line at some point this preseason.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
it's where I'm at.
I
But
agree
again,
with
this is situationally, because if this was the same offensive line of last year, I'm good. Here's my problem. Seals coming in week 1 as a starter. They're retooling the left guard position, right? And we still need to see Tyler Badaz. Tyler Badaz hasn't quite walked all the way through the door yet. It was supposed to be an open competition, neither here nor there. For the continuity aspect and how they've attacked it through camp, I would like to see them. Now, the last preseason game, maybe not, but maybe last week against Seattle, see the starters out there if they're healthy enough to go out there and play to get some continuity, because it's a different core group than last year. But overall, I'm team okay for the most part. I just think, to me, it's situational. Depending on what the situation is and what the team needs and where the team is at, depending on these different positions, at that point, you need to look at it. Because on the backside, why was Gallimore playing so much? Somebody help me. Didn't we lose him last year for 8-9 weeks?
Yeah,
whatnot? Why was he out here playing? Like, is Gallimore battling for a job? Like, what are we doing with that front? That's the kind of stuff to me that makes me scratch my head. I'm like, is it the third quarter? Did I just see Gallimore again? What is going on? But situationally, I think there's times where it does matter. For me this year, I just like to see the offensive line get a couple of series together just to kind of build some continuity.
So 2 comments in the chat. And they're both along the same lines. And I definitely think it's I see where you're coming from, but I think it's worth bringing up. So our guy Robert Roberts, shout out to him. He's joined our Freestyle Fridays multiple times. Really appreciate that. And then also Mike Van Horn are kind of along the same page, where they say starters will play 2 or 3 series and then done. And Robert says play them a series. Question is, so let's say you go 3 and out in the first series, and then the second series you go 5 or 6 snaps, score, punt, whatever, kind of irrelevant. So you played 10 snaps of football. Does that really do anything at all for an NFL caliber player to get them ready for a game that you don't get from a joint practice? Like, I just don't see, like, I hear people say that, and I understand the idea behind it. Like, well, at least they got some action. But a lot of times they're not going against the ones of the other team anyways, because the other team may be sitting their starters. So is that really meaningful snaps for them? I don't know. Like, I just feel like if you're playing joint practices against good teams, you're able to get them enough live action snaps to be ready to go. I don't think 8 plays or 12 plays is going to make them, a higher caliber offense than what they would be if you sat them all preseason and just played them in joint practices.
I do think, and I like the idea of the joint practices in this controlled setting, and you get that, and you get to go through those things. And again, that's why it's situationally. 10 to 12 snaps for the offensive line to be on the field in a game and not on a practice field, I think that does matter to a certain extent. I think there's some viability there. However, it wouldn't matter anyways, for the simple fact Tyron Smith wouldn't have played anyways, because he was already banged up before we got to the first preseason game. So, I mean, even that's out the window. And then, of course, how they've handled the left guard position. Hell, they would have lined him out there. It'd probably been Connor McGovern at left guard and not Tyler Smith playing with the other guys. So that would kind of been washed down the board as well, too. But, yeah, just situation when it comes to preseason. I think at this point in time, it's big business, obviously, and you have to protect your investments, and you need to make sure that your team's full force hitting week 1 and getting ready. So I'm okay there. I just think, like, again, just situationally, and I'm with you. And that's kind of the big talk we had last year. Talking about, well, that going out there for 10 snaps, is that going to be the difference of what his season is going to be? And it was like, no, but just to get it out of the way, because he was gone for the year, right? And obviously it didn't matter because he even throw half a camp, and we saw he did week 1. So there's that. But not everybody's Dak, though. Not every player's Dak, though. Just to be clear. Just saying. Speaking of which, on the Chargers game, since last we were on, they did play that game. First game the Cowboys have won in preseason on the road in 10 years. Last one they won on the road was August of 2012. So, hey, they got rid of a long-term bugaboo, if you will. The one thing, I'll say this, I'll let y'all go as well, is the one thing that stuck out to me, man, I don't remember preseason. I ain't talking about regular season, just preseason. Like, man, from week 1 to week 2, obviously you saw the nice coming forward, right? Like, you're seeing progress, which you want to see every preseason game. But then the other side of things too was what a complete game, like all three phases of the game. I think defense did well, right? They did their job. The offense got through and they were doing their job. And of course, special teams, they do matter. And they came through and did their job. So, man, I was just impressed by how complete the team played. And, I mean, of course, it's cool to get the win. And Turpentine has officially arrived. Turbo Turpentine, that is. So, just a complete game I thought was really good. I think there's some guys that did some good stuff to maybe help themselves position, whether it's on this team or next, get some tape out there. With the Chargers game, anything particular stuck out to you? What'd you like? What you didn't like?
Yeah, so that game was exciting, especially coming off the previous week where we scored 7 points, had 17 penalties, couldn't really get anything moving on offense until Ben DiNucci, shout out to Nucci gang, came in, and then suddenly the offense opened up a little bit. This game, early on, we weren't really putting up a huge offensive performance, but as the game went on, the team started to relax, get more comfortable. We saw the penalty numbers come down. We saw Izzy Mukwamu step up and have a huge game and probably solidify a spot on the 53-man roster. We saw Turpin solidify a spot on the 53-man roster. And I want to throw this out there real quick, too. For the fantasy football players here, because I'm sure a lot of you do play fantasy football. So Turpentine's kind of, it's out there. That, Turpentine's a name that a lot of people are using. How about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turpins? I'm just saying, that's a fire one. You should go with that because no one else is using it yet. Overall, I feel like it was a good game. We saw special teams play. We saw guys who are fighting for roster spots look like they're fighting for a roster spot, not just looking like it was too big of a moment for them. Like we saw guys like Josiah Brunson, for instance, a name that people really wouldn't think about and probably a lot of fans didn't even realize was on the roster, looked good. We saw Mika Tafua make a legit argument like, hey, I deserve a roster spot. He probably won't get one because the defensive end room is deep, but he's looked really good in preseason. We saw guys like Bohanna step up and have another big game. Izzy, like we mentioned earlier, solidified a spot. Kelvin Joseph, who's had a pretty rough camp, played okay. He had a pretty decent game. Had a pass breakup, was sticking coverage, did give up a reception, but more often than not looked pretty good. So I thought it was a pretty complete game for all three phases. Nashawn Wright, that was ugly. So I feel bad for him. I genuinely do because he's a guy that had a really good camp. He looked good, really good in camp. In fact, I think a lot of people probably had him above Kelvin Joseph in camp, but he's had 2 straight bad preseason games, so that's rough. So hopefully he can rebound this week. But, yeah, just overall, I was pleased with the game. We saw the penalties go from 17 to 8, so more complete overall.
And the thing about it, too, is, boy, he's giving me that dadgum vibe of Chidobe Awuzie. He's there. He's right there. And he just can't stop the ball from being completed. Like he'll be right there.
Yeah, it's like he's always in position, and it's like, you're still catching it.
Just by the, it was by the ear, underneath the armpit. I mean, just however it would just get mine, and kind of the same thing there. And for those that need a name for their fantasy football team, there it is right there.
Right there, I got you.
Yeah, that part. So yeah, another guy too, Smith, the wide receiver, number 80, 2 big catches. The Broncos game up the sideline whenever Ben DiNucci got in, and he had another big catch against the Chargers. So putting some good film out there. Obviously, he's not going to make this squad, but maybe a practice squad guy who's put some film, bigger body guy, and done some things. The other guy too, Harper at linebacker. He's had solid preseason games. He's almost had 2 interceptions as well, and has played fairly decently this during this preseason games. Mary, for you in the game.
Mary, before you go, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think our defense through 2 games has allowed in terms of rushing yards per carry? What do you think they've allowed so far through 2 games?
Per carry? Ooh.
Can you hear me? Are we good?
Yeah, you're good.
Per carry.
Yeah, what do you think they've allowed through 2 games?
I think it's going to be better than last year. I would say
2.4. 2.4
okay,
yards
so I was gonna say 3. So okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.
Pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah,
I was gonna say 3.
The guy Big Bo's been playing well preseason. Hopefully that transfers over.
I mean that's huge. I mean if our defensive tackles can translate that to the season, that'd be amazing. But I just echo what you guys said. It was definitely way more complete. Coming off that Broncos practice and that Broncos preseason game, you know, everything was in a tailspin. And, you know, people were mad, people were frustrated. It's good to see them the way they played in that game versus how they in this practice with Tigers in this game. They bounced back, and they didn't just slump and give up, and they they won that, and so I definitely think it was a big turnaround, and that's kind of something you want to see. I think that says a lot, whether it's part of coaching and how they're coaching them up, or whether it's the type of guys they got and their attitude, whatever it might be. I think that's a great turnaround for them, and it's something for them to build on, especially the younger guys.
Yeah, big facts. It was good to get that win and get it out of the way. Look, I'm not big on preseason wins. It's all about, really looking individually and evaluating what's at each position group and whatnot. But I do like getting a little dub in preseason. It's okay. It's okay to celebrate a little dub there. Great game for them. What a perfect way to wrap up their time on the West Coast. To end it on a high note to get back over here to Dallas for the game Friday versus Seattle. So with that being said, we do have the game Friday against Seattle. And we did talk about, the guys that are going to be playing. Who's the guy on the roster, in your opinion, that needs to do something to solidify a spot? Or do you think they're already in place now? What do you think? Do you think there's a guy that maybe has a chance here to do something to solidify a spot? Or do you think they're kind of like, hey, you're playing for tape and we're just kind of going from there? See, I think for me, the guy I would pick out the gate, we talked about him earlier, I think it's the running back. I think
I was going to say him too.
Yeah. I think depending on what Malik Davis does, I think there's an opportunity for him to play himself onto the roster. Outside of Malik Davis,
I think everything's pretty set. It's going to be those guys like him that have that one last shot.
That's a good one, Collins, the tackle. But Davis would be one off top. I think the linebacker core, right? Where's Story Jackson at? I don't know. Where's Harper at? Those guys can do some good things here in this last game to help their position move forward. Oh, do you have anyone in mind that you're thinking about that needs to do something pretty productive here, or do you think it's locked up already?
I think there's still a few positions that are definitely open. Like Malik Jefferson is a name in that linebacker room that's done enough in preseason to at least put his name in the conversation. I don't think he's a favorite to win that fifth linebacker spot, but he's done enough to at least – he's had some good film. He's played a lot of special team snap too, which is important because that means Bone Fossil may have a plan for him. So I think he's definitely somebody to consider. Another guy we probably should talk about is Ridgeway. A lot of the buzz is he's safe, he's going to make the team, but they're going to have a hard look at the one tech and say, we have Gallimore who's going to be our starting one tech. We have Carlos Watkins who looked good last year, who can play lots of positions. He has position flex. We have Big Bo, who's had a really good camp and has been really good in preseason. His body looks different. His pad level's different. He's a different player than last year. And McCarthy was gushing about him in 2 straight press conferences. They're really excited with Bohanna. However, they spent a draft pick this year on Ridgeway. He's a guy that long-term could be your one tech of the future. So that's interesting too. Sebi put a great one. Brett Maher's the only kicker on our roster. That doesn't mean that his job is locked up.
Right. He had a good day of practice.
Definitely the favorite. He did have a good day of practice. He's the favorite to win it. But if he has a really bad game, that may change things. Mendoza mentioned it too. Hendershot's a guy too. He has a good shot if they go 4 deep at tight end. He may have a decent shot if they go 3 deep at tight end. But he's going to have to continue to stack those good days together if he's going to make the roster because his spot's not safe either. Somebody mentioned Collins. Collins, I would have felt better about his chances making it had they not had, let's go back at practice now. Let's go back fully padded, and I think that kind of changes things there. I don't know if they go 5 deep at tackle. I feel like they're pretty confident with the front 4 that they have, although I want to go get a swing tackle or somebody else. I don't know that Collins makes the team now, which is kind of interesting because he's looked pretty good in camp, and he looked really good in preseason. He's been a surprise to me the first 2 games. So there's definitely 5 or 6 players. Somebody mentioned Izzy Mukwamu. I think he's safe after last game, but depending on what his injury was, they may not go 5 deep at safety. And then Nashawn Wright is definitely worth mentioning. He's had 2 rough preseason games. They may not want to go 7 deep at cornerback. but they just spent a 3rd-round pick on him. So that stuff's going to factor into it. And then the final guy is Tristan Hill. He's had a really good camp.
I think
He's been really good preseason. I think they want him to make it. But again, you're going to have to look at those 3 techs and say, do we really need him? Do we trade him? Basham's probably in that conversation too. He's played well enough that he should make a 53-man roster spot. But do you have room for him on your 53? That's where the question comes in. So I think there's probably 5 or 6 guys.
Yeah, I think Basham's safe. I think from an edge rusher standpoint, I think Basham's safe.
So 6 deep at defensive end?
Very possible.
Could be.
I mean, they could go 13 across the line if they wanted to. They did
it last year.
Yeah,
I think they should, honestly. I mean,
and they like to have all those guys that can rush and do things. The other side, right, when it comes to because everyone's talking about the Kelvin Joseph, should the Cowboys move on, but it's a 2nd-round pick. Oh my God! I mean, hey, Nation Rutt's a 3rd-round pick, and you're literally talking about 1 year later, you're moving on from a 3rd-round pick. Mm-hmm. Teams just don't like to do that. This ain't just a Dallas thing. Be clear. This is a league-wide thing. Once you're drafted, where you're drafted at, that status matters. So I don't know if they will. And it's no different than when we talked about when it comes to Fiocco and Houston. They spent a draft pick on Fiocco. They didn't draft Houston. Mm-hmm. So even if they might feel maybe Houston could give them a little bit more, they've already invested. So they'll end up keeping Fiocco anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. Nation, I'm not sure. He needs to – look, he's in position. He's got to get a little bit better, right? Fair. But I don't know if he's going to be on the chopping block. So and we've said before, this defensive line is going to be wildly interesting how they build this thing. To me, if they're going to keep Bohanna and Ridgeway, that tells me Carlos Watkins is out. Then it's kind of how I look. They're not keeping all 3 of those guys, in my opinion. So that's what gets really interesting at that point, how they break this thing down and how they get to it. And then you're deep there. Somebody needs a defensive lineman. Who are you willing to trade? Obviously, we talk about Tristan Hill being the trade piece, right? Who else? Is there somebody else that you can move and that would think about moving? And maybe, let's say we think Basham's safe, but somebody needs an edge. Would you flip Basham at that point, perhaps? So that's going to be the most interesting thing coming up here on August 30th when they make the final cuts to the roster, how they handle this defensive line to me. And, of course, the big thing that we always talk about when it comes into these final preseason games of the year, go out there and be great, young men. Go put that tape out there, whether you're going to land in Dallas or not. I know us over here, we cheer for the players, and we want you to go out there and do well, stay healthy, and I really, really hope, if it's not going to be here, man, put that tape out there and end up on somebody's roster and keep living your NFL dream. And, but, boy.
Nick, I got a question for you.
Okay.
So Hellman put out his interpretation of McCarthy's press conference saying that he thinks Cooper's pretty much locked up the quarterback 2 spot. Do you think there's anything Will Grier could do this week to steal that spot from him, or do you think that that's a done deal?
No, because he's already better than Cooper Rush. So I don't. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, he's already better than Cooper Rush, and if Rush has locked it up, I mean, again, would they carry 3 quarterbacks? Like here'd be my problem, right? Why would you carry 3? Because at this point, why are you keeping Will Grier? What's the point? Because are you keeping him because he's talented enough? You think he's good enough to keep on the team? Then you move on from Cooper Rush. Rush has been here, done that. Okay, but he is, we know he's Kellen Moore's guy. We understand that. But at the tail end of things, if you're going to keep 3, it's wasteful. It's wasteful of another position long in the long scheme of things. In the 50, you only got 53 of these positions. We don't need to keep 3 quarterbacks. Keep the best backup. I think it's Will Grier, and we'll see. And right, he can play a little bit more, but Rush is just, if Dave says he thinks it's locked up, I don't know if there's anything Will Grier can do this last game to say, okay, we're going to push Rush aside and use you. Now, is there a possibility that he can come back to the practice squad, the vet practice squad? I don't know, but yeah, I would. For me in this team, I hope there's something. Throw for 500 yards, Will Grier. 500 yards. 5 touchdowns, and say you got to keep me and get rid of Rush. Maybe that.
We said this earlier in the offseason where that Minnesota game gave Cooper Rush another 9 lives. So, that's just how the Cowboys are. I mean, he's won an NFL game now, and he knows the system better. He knows Kellen Moore's playbook better.
There it is. You already know.
That's what it is. That's
he's
how
really
it's gonna
smart.
Yeah. That's how it's gonna go.
Okay. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But I know. I got to hear the cold, hard truth sometimes. Our guy Steve says, are we truly sold on Dorian Armstrong? He's making the squad for sure, but let's not act like he's a budding star. I mean, it's been pretty quiet this training camp and preseason for the most part. You know, is he safe, You think Dorian's is safe?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely safe. Because I think if there's any question if they were going to keep him or not, well, first off, they signed him to not a huge deal, but they gave him a decent amount of money. He's still young. He was pretty productive last year when he played. I don't know if he's the starter, though. Fowler's played pretty well. Fowler's popped when we have seen him, and he's at a better camp, or at least a louder camp than what we've seen with Dorian. But I definitely think they like him, and they have a role for him. And a lot of the people that are close to the team said the same thing. The Cowboys value what Dorian Armstrong can do. And keep in mind, he's only 24 years old. Like, he's a young player who was as productive, if not more productive, statistically than what we saw from Gregor over the last 8 weeks of the season last year. So I don't know that I would say he's a budding star. I would agree with that. He's not a budding star, but I definitely think he's a solid rotational player who can start and give you good snaps. So I think he's safe for sure.
I agree. Yeah, he's definitely safe.
Fair. Going to be interesting. We'll wrap it up on this one. If you have one hope between now and before cuts get here, they can do anything. Period. They keep somebody. They're going to cut somebody. They acquire somebody. If you could just get one thing for the Cowboys to do to make your NFL season be more hyped for Week 1 for the betterment of the team, what is the one thing? You just get one. We'll be here all night, Mary. We'll just put you up here, and me and will just kick back and let you go, and we'll be here for another hour or two. But just one. If you could just go with one thing that the Cowboys could do, any way, shape, or form, before we get to Week 1, what is it that you want to see them do?
Swing tackle.
Okay. Says a swing tackle. All right. Oh?
I'm right there. Like, if it's Eric Fisher, great. If you go trade for Isaiah Wynn, great. I don't care what you do. I need a veteran swing tackle that I feel comfortable with going into the season. There's guys out there, too, like it's probably worth having this conversation. Brian Bulaka has familiarity with Philbin and with McCarthy, but he's only been a right tackle. So does that help you if Tyron goes down? Because then you're swinging Steele over there, and we don't really want him to play left tackle. So I would say he's a name you're probably not looking at, but Eric Fisher has been a left tackle. Jarrell Williams has been a left tackle. Isaiah Wynn was a left tackle last year. He played 16 games, gave up less pressures, less quarterback hits than Steele did, and Steele was right tackle and left tackle in more snaps. So he's a name I'd be interested in, but he's on the final year of a deal, so you're eating $10 million now. So I think if you trade for him, you have to kind of go ahead and invest in him and sign a new contract to lower that cap hit anyways, even though we can afford it, because you want to go ahead and lock him down and say, we're giving up a draft pick. We are looking at him as one of our starters moving forward. I just need them to get a swing tackle because I'm terrified at the thought of having Josh Ball or having to have Tyler Smith kick out to tackle. I just don't like it. Matt Willetsko was hurt. We haven't seen him long enough to know if he's even an option at left tackle. There's just nobody on the roster that I feel confident in right now. So it has to be swing tackle.
Yeah. And here's the thing, too. One of my biggest points here about trading for Wynn has been Steele's last year of his deal. So, I mean, you got to pay somebody either way, but it's going to be Steele or Wynn. You know, go get the better prospect, perhaps. But, Professor, I can't believe I said you could do one thing. The Cowboys do one thing, and you didn't do it. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. They can cancel, they can get rid of Rowdy.
That's how concerned I am at tackle. Like, that tells you the dire straits the warning. Because I would have canceled Rowdy. That would have been my first movement most years. But we just saw Tyron get hurt. Our injury scared today. Like, I'm even more scared about having no vet swing tackle than I am with dealing with Rowdy. Like, I will put up with Rowdy if we can go get a viable swing tackle for this year. And then next year, he's right back at the top of my list.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, the Cowboys going to do this? No, because we're talking about it too much. But that's okay. That's fine. It's fine. I'm going to throw it out there anyways. I said it as soon as I saw the little report that they were taking calls on Wynn or whatever. Just do it. Like, just do it. Like you don't get these kind of opportunities to go secure that kind of player that can solidify your offensive line right now. And to me, like, this is a no-brainer what they should go do. Now, since we're all kind of on the same mindset there when it comes to that, how much you giving up, Oh? What's the take? What's the ceiling of what you're willing to give?
I think they would move on from him for a fifth because they're actually shopping him to teams. It's not teams are calling about him.
Right.
They're offering him to teams that are calling them. So that's worth noting. They also moved him to a new position, which is also worth noting too. And he's had injury concerns. So he's a guy that they spent a first-round pick on who's missed a lot of time. So they may not want to sign him to a long-term deal, and they could immediately open up $10 million of cap space. So I think a fourth would definitely do it, but I think if you offered a fifth, you could get him. And I would absolutely do that for a fifth. I'd give him a fourth, and I'd be fine with it.
You do with a fourth? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would you do it for Hill in a fourth?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mary?
Interesting.
How high are you willing to go secure Mr. Wynn?
I mean, I'm desperate. I'd give up a third.
Third. She said give up that third.
I would.
Okay. She says protect
if
Dak
this
at all
is
costs.
if this is the life and death of Dak Prescott,
You got to give it up. Yeah. This is the type of move that we've talked about before. Securing somebody, doing something within the wheelhouse to construct, and I would love to see, Stephen Jones make this kind of move, right? And look, and take Wynn out of the equation for just a second, but go and use a low round draft pick, secure somebody to come in here to solidify this thing. And look, if you're going to be out, and I've said this a ton, if you're going to be all the way out on free agency, which we kind of understand that they are, we know what they do in free agency, and you're going to draft well, then you gotta do something else to add to the draft. You're not going to do free agency, then be in the trade side, and he's done it some, right? The Robert Quinns of the world, okay, that worked out pretty well for them to have to give up a lot. Obviously, they gave up the first for Amari Cooper, but that was good money return there for me. Made that a better quarterback, and his time here was more than worth the first-round pick. So there's been times they've been able to get after it, and they've tried before, whether it was the Jamal Adams or Mika Fitzpatrick. So they have seemingly tried more so in the trade scope. And here, I think for sure, when you look at the lay of the land and kind of what we talked about on the space as well, is that I just don't think they like what's in free agency to a certain extent. Because I think if there was something out there that they liked, I think they would have signed them. We've talked about all the usual suspects at wide receiver, Will Fullers, Manuel Sanders, all these different guys. And same thing when it comes to the offensive line as well. I think there was a guy out there they liked. I think they might pull the trigger. And maybe they still do, but maybe they're going to wait and see. And because we know their due diligence, right, is what they do. So if they can wait and see, and yeah, you already know that due diligence, and well, now here's a win available. Do we want to check the tape and do something there? Oh, well, who's going to get cut? Maybe somebody gets cut. We can slide in. So yeah, I don't know, man. They definitely got to go ahead and take care of the offensive line for sure, as we said. Anything the Cowboys can do between now and the beginning of the season, please, we beg you, protect Dak Prescott at all costs. Yeah. Go get us an offensive lineman. With that being said, we appreciate everybody that came through and rocked. Appreciate all the super chats. Our first ones, guys. We're over 1K subs. Programming alert. We will not be Freestyle Friday this Friday. We will because of the game, but we will be live streaming the game right here. You can come back in and kick it, and we'll see what happens over there. We'll grab this one last question here. Would you be interested in Alex Leatherwood? No, because I don't think he played tackle. I think he's strictly a guard.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
That's kind of where I'm at. Same with y'all, or?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. So he was a guy that played left tackle in college, but that wasn't the blind side because Tua is a left-handed quarterback. So the right tackle was the blind side for Alabama. So that's kind of worth noting too. No, I don't know. He's a guy he would have to be super cheap for me to go after. Like if he was like a 7th-round pick or something, yeah, sure, why not? Throw that out there for him. But the fact that the Raiders want to move on from him potentially this early is a big red flag for me. So I think I would sit out. And again, I do think he's a guy that's better suited for guard. And I think with Tyler Smith and Zach Martin, we should be good at guard. So, no, I'm out.
Yeah, fair enough. One last thing before we get out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Mary, we want to do something about your handle there. Want to change that.
Yeah.
It's new day. It's new time. It's new era. We got to complete the rebrand here.
Gotcha.
We got to complete the rebrand here.
I do want to mention this because our guy Ultra, shout out to him, brought it up way earlier in the show. He said you should call the Texans for Laramie Tunsil. love the player. I don't think that's viable at all. The reason I say that is the Texans would eat $16 million of dead space this year, $16 million of dead space next year, and save $1 million. So they're eating $32 million of cap space to make that trade. You would have to give them a ridiculous draft compensation for that to be worth their while. And especially a team that's going to be bad, like you need something to build around. When you're a team that's kind of hapless and they have a guy like Davis Mills that they like at quarterback, you got to have something to build around. So if you feel comfortable with your quarterback, you want to keep the tackle and then use draft picks to build. You don't want to trade the one good offensive lineman you have, eat $32 million of cap space in exchange for a mid to late first round pick. It's not going to be worth it. I like the player though.
Yeah,
Rowdy
for swing tackle. L's are helping you with your handle already. There it is. See, you get already getting the things popping.
I gotta think some things through. We'll
yeah, you gotta think some things through for sure. With that being said, we will have the happy hour space still on Friday. I'm going to adjust the time on there because I think we kick off at 7. I haven't even looked because I know we're back on Texas time now. They're not out there on the West Coast anymore. These 9 o'clock kickoffs, and I'm like, what are we doing? But it is what it is. But I'm still gonna try to edge in there and get the happy hour space in on Friday. Then we'll be right back here live streaming 15 minutes before kickoff. Come on through. We'll have a good time and rock it that way. And of course, next Wednesday we'll be right back in the building. And Mary's back.
Yes, I'm back. Woo, 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 woo.
Look. She did. She did the veteran move. Oh, you know what? Hey, I'm not. Guess what? I don't need training camp, y'all. Hey, when it really matters, I'm here. I'm a vet. I'm taking this vet time. Well played, Mary. Well played. Clap that up. That was a veteran move, Mary. Well done. With that
she said I have some work stuff going on, and none of us were like, tell us about this work thing. We were just like, oh, bet sounds good. We just took her word for it. That's what those vets that came like, my ankle's bothering me, but I'm not going to go to the doctor. Just take my word for it. I'll be there in a couple of weeks.
Oh man, that's so true. I tell you what, Eddie. I'll run one for an hour. Give me about 10 minutes, and we will run a space for about an hour. Y'all gonna keep me up all night. I got some Madden 23 to play, or my online league's gonna get really mad at me, so I gotta knock that out. But we'll be in the Twitter spheres. Y'all go make sure you go over there and follow us. And man, prayers up, and hopefully we get some really good news, extending good news on Tyron Smith in the morning of the AM after the MRI, guys. Peace.
Bye.